What's up, guys? Tommy Kerrigan with Tommy Untamed. We've got an incredible guest today. Show starts right now. You just showed me a flag that showed up in your mail that you didn't order. About 10 years ago, I had a bong show up to my house that I didn't order. A very nice bong with like custom stamps on. This was in Georgia too, where it's not 2025 Colorado. It was 2015 Georgia, where I might still be banned there, but it was like the devil. And I never could never figure and it wasn't like something that you would kind of it wasn't like a little $2 gas station glass piece. This was like this was like an $800 like 6 chamber single piece glass blown honeycomb. I haven't smoked in forever, but it was an incredible piece. And I remember, so me and my buddy would use it, and we just kept, we're like, eventually someone's going to come, because it was a college town. We're like, eventually someone's going to come knock on the door, and we're just going to have to hand it over to them and be like, hey, we kept it in one piece for you. And it never happened. And I think I had it for a couple years, and then I just gave it to a friend. I was like, I don't know I don't know if it's cursed. I don't know if it's like, I don't know what it is. So that's the only time ever I had mail that wasn't for me, aside from like a bill or something, like an actual item that I kind of liked. And that's what you just showed me.
Yeah. Well, yeah, they sent me a couple things that I ordered. I ordered some methylene blue from Alex, and they stuck these in there. And well, okay. I don't know what I'm going to do with them, but it's a nice thought.
Yeah. Yeah.
Anyhow,
Um,
here we are.
Here we are. Yeah, no, I was gonna say, and this, I feel like this has happened multiple times with you, where you pop into my head, I text you, and you were like, I thought you were gonna text me. There's something fucking weird going. I don't even, maybe it's not even weird. Maybe I just kind of accept it as something
Well,
going on.
you
But it's
know,
happened multiple times.
as I'm a student of Rudolf Steiner
Uh huh.
for the last 50 years or so. I first became aware of them when I was in the eighth grade and junior high. We used to call it middle school. And what he would basically say is that we're all clairvoyant. It's just we got so many other things going on
Hmm.
competing for airtime. I mean, I'm of course paraphrasing, but basically, we're so caught up in our abstract, brain-bound thinking that we don't really allow a lot of these things to come forward. It's like, when I was talking with Douglas, Douglas Gabriel, Dr. Douglas Gabriel, who has about 25 books out on Rudolf Steiner. He's my best buddy. And, I edited his books for him, and he's my sounding board. And we were talking about it on one of the many, many, many podcasts that we've done together over on YouTube. And I said, well, like, for example, the other day, I'm just sitting there by myself at my computer, like I am on every morning, basically. And the song Sitting on a Dock of a Bay, right, pops into my head. And I'm just sitting there, I'm thinking, and I'm not singing, Otis Redding. And Barbara wakes up, comes downstairs, and she's singing Sitting on a Dock of a Bay while I'm thinking about it, but I didn't sing it, so she just kind of got it. And it's not like we were listening to it the other day,
Yeah.
I hadn't thought about it in a long, long time. So we have these things that happen, these kind of serendipitous associations that, if we're paying attention, can remind us that there's a larger view.
There's a
And
there's a great book called Phenomena by Annie Jacobson about government funded kind of, for lack of a better phrase, blanket term woo woo in the Cold War, from telekinesis to ESP to remote view. Operation Paperclip. That's a great one. That's the first one I ever read at first, and I've been trying to get her on my podcast for years. No success. But I've read all of her books,
Well,
and
some people can write, but they're not comfortable with this kind of a format, you know.
yeah. But then she went on Rogan, which tells me I just don't have a big enough show. and
Oh,
and I don't get to have thick skin through this. But that book to me is one of the more interesting. But DARPA, Operation Paperclip, all those are great. But Phenomena is the most interesting to me because even if they purport that they found nothing, and is that true or is that just misdirection, whatever, that's not as important to me. It's still important, but that's not as important to me as the fact that in the height of the Cold, it wasn't just like a down. It wasn't like a lazy Saturday. It was a Cold War where you're throwing everything, and the implications are not World War I and World War II where it's marching armies. It's thermonuclear weapons raining down from orbit at Mach 30. And during that time, they went out of their way, and not they didn't do this stuff lightly. I mean, these were special access programs about remote viewing, ESP, telekinesis, and the fact that it wasn't completely bunk, that there was a greater than 50% accuracy to it. I always wonder, did it really end? And I had on the guy, Dr. Dale Graff, who headed up the Stargate project, which was remote viewing for the CIA. I've had him on the show. He lives up in the mountains, but I always wonder about that. Like, is there something? Is there some, mass clairvoyance where, aside from a person that fine hones it over their life, maybe the average person doesn't know they have, but is there a way to detect it? Is there some spectrum on the electromagnetic spectrum? Is there some wavelength that it is detectable? Have they found a scientific way to measure what was always thought to be immeasurable? Did they find a way to find the woo woo and actually pin it down? I mean, is the average person a detector or a receiver or a broadcaster? Where on their own, they're not that powerful. But if you were to surveil a billion people, could you get some sort of even one day jump start on like what's coming the next day? Or, it. I don't think it's that crazy to. And if none of that is true, I fully believe they at least tried that. Like, why wouldn't they?
well, yeah, there is that, and when you start talking about SAPs or secret access projects, and then you get deeper down the rabbit hole, and you get into the USAPs, the
The unacknowledged, yeah,
undisclosed
the unacknowledged ones, yeah.
secret access programs. And yeah, they've been doing all this stuff. That whole men who stare at goats.
Yeah,
They made fun of it in a movie, but it really is something. And well, they put Douglas through some of that stuff. They hooked wires up to him, and they would say, "Okay, go to into alpha state. Okay, now go into delta," and he could do it. And he was one of the only people they found who could just
flip it.
at will go into those particular states. And so we're not all the same, and there's this whole litany of pronouncements out there that we have to make it like that yeah, we're all the same, as far as how far along we are. And beyond that there's like a relativistic view of what truth is. Well, this is my truth. You have your truth. I have my truth,
I'm pregnant.
And I don't even want to go there, but it's the whole idea that they no longer teach people how to think.
Hmm.
And because they don't teach people how to think, people really don't know how to think. And I mean that with the most sincerest, most
Concern.
sincere, guarded sensitivity to feelings for people. But And you could say, well, it's not their fault. But then, to what extent does karma play a role in our lives, that where we end up with education systems that don't provide us with the necessary tools to be able to meet our destiny? And that's what we're looking at. And Rudolf Steiner does talk about that, because he talks about individuals. One of the two main things that he was concerned with was reincarnation and karma. And the whole idea that there's reincarnation implies that there's this forward movement that's going on. But to what extent is your forward movement accommodating what you're working on, right? And so he talks about individuals that were quite high initiates in previous incarnations. And then when they reincarnate in a scenario where they aren't born with specific gifts, capacity, and they weren't in a educational context to where they could really benefit by tapping into these previous accomplishments. And that's a very real thing in the modern day and age. And so kind of the antidote on a level of destiny, you could say, is to study spiritual science, to study anthroposophy. So at least you've garnered some of the nomenclature, like Grail language, we call it, the Christ language, that if we want to have a dialogue with Christ that goes deeper than just your typical abstract sensate world, then what you have to do is you have to have a vocabulary that gives your mind a means for getting into a representation of other states of being. Because fundamentally, according to the spiritual scientific view of the universe is various stages of consciousness. See? And that if you looked at a rainbow and you saw that the rainbow was there because of certain converging conditions, and then you have to look at the actual human being and realize that they're the same thing.
Oh,
Okay. And
yeah.
so that's a little challenging for most people to get to that. And I skipped a lot of steps, but basically that's what we're looking at, is that this is a Maya. This is an illusion. Our experience of reality is based upon our senses. Most people think there's just five, but there's really 12. But that we're limited, and we filter our awareness of our state of consciousness through that whole gestalt, so to speak, right? But that there are ways to be able to unlock one's relationship to it. And so that's basically what I've dedicated myself to in the, what is it? I'm up to like 9 books now and that I have out. And in there, I lay out the Western esoteric path as put forward by Rudolf Steiner, but supported with all the various sources from all the various people within the tradition and outside of the tradition, with all their, basic, simple biographical information, because most people don't even know who those people are because they haven't spent the time to figure it out. But there are names that are worth knowing, because, for example, the other day I just saw a thing, and it was fascinating because they had this guy who supposedly is like the highest IQ guy they've ever tested. And he said that what he does is he spends his time studying the New Testament. So
Interesting.
it gives you pause, right? And when you, of course, they gave his number. I don't remember exactly what it was, but the assessment that they did at Harvard of historical figures, the highest they ever came up with was Johann Wolfgang von Goethe. Rudolf Steiner was the editor of Goethe's scientific works, and Goethe weighs quite significantly in the work that I've done, as far as, because there's so much that has to do with the principles of metamorphosis and Gertian science. And understanding the principles of that can help you uh, get through the kind of maze of concepts that can leave you kind of glassy eyed, staring and wondering, you know, okay, where does this go? You know, where do I plug this in? Because there's many things, you know, we like closure, right? And so we're gonna like experience something, and
We're
then
gonna figure
our
it out.
mind is going to put together something to explain it to us. So we can go there, we can move on to the next thing. We like that, you know, and but the world in its reality doesn't really lend itself to that.
It
And so
does not
Rudolf
care about
Steiner did
closure.
Rudolf Steiner did more the imaginative approach of giving people characterizations and imaginations and inspirations and intuitions, things that would leave the student free to come to their own understanding of things and to keep approaching it. But the end result, and most people don't realize this because they haven't explored it, but when I started out seriously studying Rudolf Steiner's work, it was difficult to get his books in English at that time. But there were these little pamphlets that you get. Like there was this one, and I would read it over and over and over and over again. And likewise with a few other these small pamphlets that came out from Rudolf Steiner Press and Anthroposophic Press and various book concerns. But anyways, I'd read like that, the work of the angels and man's astral body, right? And I'd read it and I'd read it again. And the fascinating thing about it was that I realized that when I read it, it's as if I haven't really read it. And it's not that it's changed, it's that I have changed. See, and that's really what we're looking at is so what can we bring to the table, right?
It's like a holographic image or something. Like as you move, you can see a
Well,
different image.
why paint it into a corner? I mean, yeah, you can have the general
Well, I mean
concept.
the idea that you as a person you change either through age or experience,
Oh,
and that is the
all of
shift.
that.
So you're looking at it and you're going, "Oh, this is a picture of a puppy," and it's like, "Well, wait 50 years," and then you shift and you go, "Oh no, it was actually the Grand Canyon," and it's like, "Well, wait a couple more years," and then you're like, "It's a cake recipe," and then you keep shifting and. I would imagine over infinite lifetimes, you finally stop trying to pin down what it is and just acknowledge that it is always changing because you're always changing.
Well, it's quite a departure from Puppy Dog to the Grand Canyon to, but you know, and again, that gets into that whole narrative of that. Well, you know, I have my truth. You know, it's like, and you look at the Rorschach blot, and they ask you, "What do you see?" And
Yeah,
you tell them, and they argue with you because you're supposed to see a woman with a flower in her hair, and you're seeing the Statue of Liberty.
yeah. I saw a dark joke about one of those. Like my therapist showed me a Rorschach test, and I was so disgusted because they didn't show me anything. They just kept showing me picture after picture of my baseball coach raping me.
Jeez.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
it's not. It's
I
not.
have to remind myself you have this kind of like twisted sense of humor.
Listen, it's not a this is that's it's just pedophilia. That's demons from hell. The joke is not funny. If it grabs you by the gut, you can go, oh, that's dark. But I mean, in terms of subjective truth, I'd always mocked that I have my truth until you just said Rorschach test, and it kind of applies there. I mean,
Okay,
it's
but see, the
subjective;
thing
it's not objective, but
is the object or the subject. See, and that's the thing is that when you get into like learning how to learn,
yeah,
and which requires a lot of unlearning, especially these days. But if you look at it more consistently and deeply. And you get into like studying the history of ideas, and you look at people like Hegel, for example. Everybody quotes Hegel, but they only quote like one sentence, because that's as far as they've dipped into him. But he's one of the most illustrious minds that has graced the Western world in the last few hundred years. And they asked him at the end of his life, well, what do you do? How do you spend your time? He said, well, uh, I study the Bible, you know. And so when you get down to it and you go, okay, like this guy who they say has the highest IQ, he says the best way you could spend your time is studying the Bible. And then you got like Hegel saying it, and you got all these people saying it. And so I think that there's something to that, and I spend a great deal of time uh, pouring into Rudolf Steiner's Christology and the significance of the mystery of Golgotha, the incarnation of Christ at the turning point of time, and what is the significance of that event. And it even gets it to where even the counter uh, narratives, the narratives that go against Christianity, are fruits of Christianity. That the very mental structures that they're using to argue about Christianity, it's just corridors that St. Thomas Aquinas went down, hundreds of years ago. Who was going down corridors that Aristotle went through,
It's it's
more hundreds of
it's
years ago. And so to have that kind of depth in your take on the whole thing,
that's
to me, I
interesting.
think is extremely rewarding.
That's such an interesting comment. I mean, it really is. Right. It's the
Because
Gatling.
really, they don't use any language. Uh,
No novelty, no
yeah,
unique
no
stance.
structures that
Well,
they're not
it's
breaking new ground. You
no,
know,
it's the Gatling gun or the Maxim machine gun, and I mean the Gatling. I don't know how accurate it is, but apparently he was like, I'm gonna make a weapon so destructive that it'll stop war. It'll stop the industrialization of war. And it's like, well, what are you using? Well, to stop the industrialization of war, I created a very industrialized war machine, and
yeah, right.
it's like, yeah, I don't know if that works. It's saying I'm against gun ownership or I'm against guns, and
Well,
it's like, no, you're not. You're for the government using guns to take guns. It's not even trying to get into a gun argument, just being
yeah, yeah,
the same idea of
there is
like
that.
using the corridors to fight the. It's like, yeah, that's not. It's not the win you think it is.
Well, but again, I used to teach history. I taught a master's program in history, world history, and American history for Waldorf teachers back in the day. And I didn't do it for very long because I felt that too many of the pupils that were there didn't bring enough to the table to that and I'm sure it's a flaw on my part, but it didn't engage me enough, which was really disappointing. When you start talking about ancient Persia and you realize, well, they couldn't even find it on a map. I mean, many of these students, and now we know they're teaching remedial arithmetic in college. So it's gotten that bad. The education that uh, well, the fathers, great fathers of our country. I mean, most of those guys, geez, they could speak and read five languages, including ancient Greek and Latin, and you know, had a really broad base from which they were working. And then you get somebody today, and they're like a goldfish, out of sight, out of mind. And
Mm.
so that's one of the reasons we're in the situation we're in, is that people are like goldfish. They become space beings. They're no longer time beings. They do, and you have to be a time being to kind of avoid the reefs. Because if you don't have that, you're just not equipped to be able to warn yourself about pitfalls that you've already worked around, you know. So it's kind
Yeah.
of like that.
Heaven's Harvest Prepper Food. 72 servings per pail, 25 years shelf life. I've had the owner Clayton on the show before. He's a God-fearing, America-loving patriot. Get one of these, get a couple of them, throw them in your basement. It's good to have it, not need it, than to need it and not have it. If you don't want to do that, you can get their seeds. You can plant your own garden, so you don't even have to keep buying them. You can just get the goods and start your own, or you can even get freeze-dried fruits and vegetables like bananas, apples, strawberries, and raspberries. They support the show. It's an honest product. It's a good safety measure to have, and they keep my show free for you. So I'd implore you guys to please go to heavensharvest.com, use the link in the description, promo code TPC. Axios Fitness Coaching is a premium resource for holistic strength and conditioning services. Axios is best known for the Training Club, capital T, capital C, an exclusive community that prioritizes accountability, technique, diet, and nutrition. Everything you need to do to take action against the decay of the modern world. Whether you're looking to improve your physique, build strength, or just take care of your health and fitness, Axios will provide you with a solution that is effective and simple to execute. All you need to do is complete the intake survey, and you can see if you're a good candidate for the training club or any other of the services. And it's going to sponsor the show. So, one company falls off, another one arises. So, if you guys like the show, you want to work out, throw the show a couple shekels, go take the survey. Thank you so much, guys.
Higher ultraviolet exposure is associated with lower mortality. The United Kingdom is a high latitude and low sunlight country. Researchers there collected data on over 360,000 participants in a study of UV exposure via solarium use. When compared with non-users, solarium users had 15% risk lowered of all-cause mortality, 23% lower risk of cardiovascular mortality, 14% lower risk of cancer mortality, and a 12% lower risk of non-cardiovascular, non-cancer mortality. In other words, all other causes. Quoting the researchers, our study adds to the growing evidence that the benefits of UV exposure outweigh the risks in low sunlight environments. A link to the original publication is available in the box below the video. Get some UV light this winter. Immerse yourself in the tranquility of the blue. Visit a Blue Room soon. www.blueroom.com.
Yeah, is it Aristotle the quote where it's like read many books so you may come across easily what great men came across through great difficulty? Essentially, like learn from your father kind of thing. Like, hey,
Yeah,
don't do that. You're about to go waste 10 years. Don't do that.
yeah, yeah. No, there's a great many quotes that
Sure. About the
fit, you know.
it's but
But the issue is that if you haven't achieved the development you desire, you probably haven't spent your time wisely enough in the directions that would entail uh, bringing about what you're looking for. It becomes that, and it's too easy to get distracted in superficialities, and you can gain tremendous motor skill on video games. Great, that's really a marketable skill. It's like, yeah, well, they may recruit you for running, drones in for the government or something, but other than that, the skill set is kind of limited, you know.
mm,
And not that there's anything wrong with that. It's like
sure.
people do what they do, but at this stage of the game, I have decided that I've achieved a lot that is of great value, and so I like being able to give back. I mean, I did it's weird, I got it buried right here. Here's something I did years ago. I've shown you this before, I believe, but I did this is a 4-volume bibliography on ancient Egypt and Mesopotamia that I did 25 years ago or something like that, when I was taking care of one of the largest private Egyptology and Mesopotamian studies libraries. And so these are subjects that I've spent a lot of time on, I guess is what I want to share. And I'm more than happy to try and assemble tools, so to speak, books that make it easier for somebody to approach the material. Because face it, Rudolf Steiner's collected work is over 6,580 lectures, right? I mean, that's the largest body of work of anybody that I know. If you know somebody that's got more, I mean, yeah, Louis L'Amour's got 50 books, but face it, it's not the same thing.
I was gonna say it's meaningful work. It's not like a novelist that just puts
Yeah,
out three
well,
books a year. Where it's
it
like,
amounts to it. I mean, the tally on it, and I don't know what it is right now, but the tally on it many years ago was 36 and a half feet of shelf space. Okay, so that's a lot of material to work through. So what I try to do, what I've always done, like when I was the manager of the largest esoteric and holistic alternative bookstores in the world, it was the largest in the world, and I was a rare book dealer. And what I find is that it's very helpful if okay, you read this, okay, well then now maybe you should read this one. And so many years of doing that have shown me that the key to unlocking an understanding of Rudolf Steiner's work is to be able to know a sequence of lectures that, they may be in different cities in different years and all of that, but yet they're mutually supportive because they're dealing with the same subject matter. So that's what I essentially have done, is I've put together volumes that cover various facets of Rudolf Steiner's work to make it easier for somebody who's interested in the material, but you don't know where to start. I mean, come on, there's 350, 60 plus books. It's really not practical for most people. First of all, they probably don't even have the room to find shelf space. It's like, and so, because I've worked with this for so many years, and I only have maybe in this house right here, maybe a third to a half of the printed material here, along with all this other stuff. There's stuff, I use these things that they're called books. People are not too familiar with, and it's funny because today you go in people's houses and they don't have a library. They think that if they just Google it, that's all they need to do, and so it generates that goldfish mentality.
To play devil's advocate on the goldfish mentality, simply to play devil's advocate, because I actually agree with what you're saying, but it's no fun if we're both nodding in agreement. So to play,
yeah,
I'll be the
yeah, I'm putting you on the spot here.
I'll be the public defendant.
You have to be the protagonist.
Yeah, no, I will. Well, I was gonna say one for books. I mean, I've probably got like 1,500 books on my phone. I've read. I keep track of how many books I read, nonfiction, just historical books, and I think over the last 3 years, I'm up to almost 200, like full length. So I mean, that's not the.
Well, that's one of the reasons I enjoy talking to you, because you're no dummy.
I'm reading a book on Grover Cleveland right now because I
he's
realized
an interesting guy. Actually,
I realized it's like I don't know a lot about almost everything, but I can at least kind of like draw a box around him and be like, yeah, Civil War, or this guy was, that was Great Depression ish. I realized I didn't even know like what century Grover was alive in, and I was like, well, that's no good. So I'm reading it, and it's fucking fantastic. He used to like, he's the only guy that like could bully and like scare Teddy Roosevelt. He was the only guy that could get Teddy to shut up, because Teddy was a bully, and apparently Grover would be like, Teddy would go in and be like, "You, Mr. President, you cannot sign this law," blah 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 blah. And apparently Grover would lift. He just had this big fat hand. He'd lift it up and he'd slam it on the table, and Teddy would get quiet. And he'd be like, "Theodore, enough!" And like people were like, it's the only time they'd ever seen Teddy get bullied around the bull moose.
Yeah.
But Point is to devil's advocate, I'm with you in that the goldfish mentality will probably be our destruction. But to defend it, if I had to, I would say that it is. It's not to take away the intense dedication and education of people like the founding fathers who were so well versed in multiple different languages and ancient history. It's also relatively it's easier to do that when all you have is a candle and a book. If that's all you have, then that is
Sure.
you'll become the best at it. The same, before iPhones, it's like, yeah, you read the back of a shampoo bottle while you're shitting. Like, it's not because you wanted to be a shampoo specialist. You're just reading through it. What else are you doing? And so, although I would say the average person probably is dumber and there is responsibility and discipline of that,
Well,
it's
don't get me
also
wrong. In some ways, they actually are smarter.
well, and
You know.
this is what I want to get at
And
is
so
if you were to bring one
it's
of them to the modern world, you could just take it. I mean, I look at like an average person, and if the average person can, sure, they're a goldfish, but they can maneuver this. They can pull up their phone at light speed right now. They could check real time news, international geopolitics happening at the literal speed of light, markets and crypto and resources and oil prices and
yeah,
striking
sure.
Iran and Ukraine while doing this. They're more well versed in a world of complexity that would probably intimidate to tears the
Yeah,
founding
sure.
fathers, and that's what I would say is some
That's the
now.
counter image of what
That's
we're discussing. Yeah.
now most people are. If you took the goldfish today and put them back 300 years ago, they'd still be fucking goldfish. They'd just be drinking and talk like they're simple people and whatever. That's fine, but I think it's a different battle space alive right now.
Well, again, and that illustrates what I was saying before about the characterization and the imaginative representation of, these things, because the less you limit the possible facets of the narrative, then it leaves it open. It gives you greater freedom when you re-enter into the subject matter to come up with something that's unique to your experience, And so it's like we're just trying to really strongly discourage people trying to be very forceful with their views. It's one time there's a restaurant across from the Gertianum that it's the fantastic buildings that he had built. If he had only been known as an architect, he would be a world historic figure. But the first one was all wood, which got burned down. And then now there's the largest poured concrete building of the time, but the Gertianums. But if you look at that and you see what is in store, it's not this intimidating thing like, okay, I'm shaming you because you're not studying all this stuff. No, because they asked Rudolf Steiner. They said, had you to do it over, what would you do different? He said, I would have spent more time with the arts. And it's important if you look at like from the Neoplatonist view and Plotinus, the wonderful Neoplatonic philosopher, he talked about the good, the true, and the beautiful, and that was the pursuit. And so you have, okay, we've talked about the true, right? And we've talked about the good somewhat, but we haven't talked that much about the beautiful, say. And that's the rub. That's that third part to the equation. That's the act of working of the logos. Okay, that in German philosophy, the best philosophers, their philosophical works are poetry, but it's not really like poetry, like rhyming stanzas so much as it's we call it prosody, that it's a poetic
It's a romantic
prose.
observation.
It's like if you can't display the idea beautifully, then maybe you have to go back to the drawing board and look at it more closely.
That
Because if something is really, really true and it really, really expresses goodness, it will also be beautiful.
that is true. It's I was gonna say, was that quote of someone of like, if you can't explain it to a kid, then you don't understand it well enough. And
Right.
that's how I always knew I was adequate at a course in college, is when I could start to make little analogies under each bullet point about organic chemistry or something. I'd be like,
Yeah. Sure.
whatever, cell gradients. I'd be like, it's a bouncer at a bar letting in every hot chick, but not letting in any guys. They're like, oh, yeah, get it, got it, good. Like,
Yeah,
I
sure.
always found when you could do, but that's like
But
another,
there's another side to that
no,
because,
but I was gonna say I like that. I mean, I don't know if it's maybe parallel or if it's further along, but it's like, can you make it beautiful?
yeah.
That's
But
cool.
but you go beyond that and you say, go to what Rudolf Steiner says. He says, well, if you're discussing a subject, that's just an indication that you really don't know the subject.
Hmm. Yeah,
Because,
yeah.
because
Why else would you wait? I don't need it to. I have never
what's there to
once done a.
discuss?
I've never
You
once
know?
done a podcast or a phone call about tying shoes.
Yeah, yeah.
I like that. That's
You
no,
know, so
no.
rather than just buy slippers,
Yeah, no. There is something to. Can you make it beautiful? Yeah, and that's. I mean, I would say even those three. I never thought about the good, the true, and the beautiful. I think that's definitely what I attempt to do.
well,
With
see, the thing is you have two fundamental viewpoints philosophically. There's other ones, but they're kind of vestigial, shall we say, because you have monotheism and then you have the Trinitarian view. So in the West, you could basically say that's the two fundamental ways of looking at the world. But the problem with the monotheistic view, where you just say, well, it's just God's will, it just is what it is, because that's the way God wanted it. But when you get into the Trinitarian view, it gives you a means for looking at, that's where you get into a dialectical process of Hegel, for example, and I don't want to get too far afield because again, you never know what audience you're speaking to, but you
don't
know,
don't don't ever be
you
concerned with
have
the
the you
audience.
have that whole idea of the Hegelian
Hegelian
dialectic,
diet. Oh, that's is that where that's from?
which is actually threefold, by the way.
Hegel.
Okay,
I
they
never
call
knew
it
that was.
dialect, but
Oh,
it's a threefold thought process. You know? And so you hear people today talking in geopolitics about problem, reaction,
action,
solution. That's
thesis,
using Hegelian
antithesis,
dialectic
synthesis.
in yeah in thesis, antithesis, synthesis
Synthesis.
is one way of looking at it. And so, and that's well and good. And in the Kabbalah, you have the tree of life, and that's groups of three, right? There's the nine, and then there's the 10th, which is Malkuth, which is the kingdom. That's the earthly realm. So you have these pre conditions before the earthly realm that's present in the work of Rudolf Steiner and in other sources, esoteric sources from the East and whatnot. So that really, when it gets down to it, and I don't want to get too obscure, but I can't be honest if I don't get a little obscure, is that the Earth is considered to be the fourth planetary condition. Okay. Our present earthly realm is the fourth stage in a process of stages. So that you have these pre-earthly conditions that have to do with the primal physical, primal etheric, and primal astral and their development. And now we incarnate into those vehicles that developed in pre-earthly conditions with what we call, in the West, usually we call it an ego, but it's really essentially the I. And that's the thing that you can make reference to in a way that nobody else can, because only you can call yourself I. See? And of course, if you go into German, the word I is ich, which is ICH, which is actually like the
Ich bin
initials of
ein
Jesus
Berliner.
Christ,
Oh,
right? See, and so there's a lot of material that's available for people that have an interest. I suppose I should show you some of my stuff,
yeah.
just for a little show and tell. This is my main work, The Arcana of the Grail Angel, the spiritual science of the Holy Blood and of the Holy Grail. And that's a thorough 640-page plus tome with many, many cosmological diagrams that play into the narrative. And so that's my first book, whereas the second is The Arcana of Light on the Path, which is a working with that whole archetypal system with Mabel Collins' meditative guidebook, Light on the Path. She was a co-editor with Blavatsky of the Theosophical magazine in the early days. And here we have The Arcana of the Holy Grail. And I brought up all the names of all these people, but it takes too much time to get into explaining who they are. That's a tapestry, right? That's Burne-Jones, Pre-Raphaelite. There's, of course, wonderful pictures on the back, too. I have a fondness for alchemical works that fit into the subject matter. And then, of course, there's the biography of the Comte de Saint-Germain by Isabel Cooper Oakley, plus her monograph on the secret societies. I added, of course, Rudolf Steiner's commentary from various sources regarding those subjects. And then one of my favorites, Magical Idealism. It's a collection of Novalis, the poet-philosopher, German, who died very young and influenced a great many people. And I thought it tragic that people in America don't even know who that guy is.
Never heard.
And so here's a continuation, magical individuality. And there you see a sequence of incarnations that Rudolf Steiner makes reference to regarding that individual Novalis, but as Phineas, Elijah, John the Baptist, Raphael, and Novalis. I'll just leave it at that as a riddle. And we're at the most recent publication. There's the East and the Light of the West, and the Children of Lucifer and the Brothers of Christ, which is selected lectures of Rudolf Steiner. There you have one of the seven wonders of the ancient world. It's Phidias's statue of Jupiter, Zeus, right? And I really like to illustrate the books with these. There's Dionysius with a satyr behind him. I get into all those subjects. And if you can avail yourself of the mythic traditions and the legends and the lore, it will only stand you in a very healthy way towards moving toward understanding these materials, because it's encoded in the myths, legends, and lore of our forefathers, whether we know it or not. I mean, it's even encoded in the days of the week. The week begins on Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. It goes through the whole sequence of planetary evolution: Saturn, Sun, Moon. And then Earth is a Mars and a Mercury period. and then Jupiter and Venus, and Vulcan gets left off. But all this is explained in depth in my material. But there's that, I mean, there's always more. But I thought I'd be amiss if I didn't at least point out what I've been doing.
And I think I've said before, I wish you would narrate them.
Narrate them?
Yeah, narrate your works.
Oh, you mean like record
Like
them?
an audiobook. I mean, it's my favorite.
Well, I've toyed with the idea, and actually because I've spent so much time creating them, it's pulled me away from my own channel where I had a great many podcasts that I'd done over the years, and with numerous different people. And so yeah, I'm looking at that idea, and I think that it would be helpful. Like, well, for example, the book on Rosicrucian Theosophy. Well, 80% of that book is previously unpublished in English, and it deals with some early lectures that Rudolf Steiner gave on Rosicrucianism that hasn't been available in English. And so, there's things like that I think are worth doing. And also fresh translations of Rudolf Steiner's materials can give you a different vantage point. And the way in which I edited the materials so that the terminology, I brought it together, because sometimes he'll be referring to a topic and he'll use a term to explain it within cycles, like the fifth post-Atlantean period. And then they call it, well, the fifth post-Atlantean epoch. And then they call it, and they have all these names. So you're never, unless you really know what you're doing, you're not quite sure exactly which cycle, the longer one or the shorter 2,160 year cycle, or the one that's 7 times longer, or what are we getting at, you see? And so all that kind of workings can be very helpful when studying Rudolf Steiner's material and other subjects, because once you get that under your belt, you can go back and Rudolf Steiner shows you how to reapproach the mythic content of the ancient Europeans and ancient Middle Easterns and all the various world cultures, but to have an understanding, because you have the backdrop of the esoteric content, and that's invaluable. And that if you do that, if you do learn those myths and legends, that it will give you the tendency to reincarnate into a situation to where you will have the faculty to sort it all out. So that's an added bonus.
I'm more and more convinced of reincarnation, if not for the reason that I definitely need some more time. Like,
yeah, it's like, what without reincarnation, what is the point?
Well, I was gonna say, it's not even like some, although there is that it's not even some existential, like, oh, I want to keep going, I want to live. No, not even that. I look at it like, I have friends that have like started podcasts, and after like 3-4 months, like, yeah, it's just not really working. And I'm like, dude, you got to slave away at it. I mean, I'm 5.5 years, and I'm very like aware now. I'm like, oh, I'm maybe halfway through getting it to where I even like respect it. It's just like, if I want to do the job right, I need more time. And more I look at reincarnation primarily as like, hey, we got to push this back, and we got to push the release of the movie back another month. We have post-production work to do. I'm just like,
right.
I've done all of this, I have all of these experiences. I'm like, I need several lifetimes if I want this to be like a meaningful investment of conscious time.
Yeah, it's like if you're a musician, and then you're confronted with Mozart. I mean, what in the world are you supposed to do?
Well,
it's old and he's writing.
Yeah, but see, I look at that, and maybe it's my own just defense mechanism. I go, he's on his 9th incarnation. That's bullshit. He did.
No, but that really is what plays in.
Came out of the gates swinging.
Came out of the gates, and he was all ready to do it. And He was, and if you look at, it's interesting because if you go into there's a collection called Conversations with Eckermann, and Eckermann was Johann Wolfgang von Goethe's personal secretary, and there's all these conversations, and they may be just a part of a page or a few pages long, just these short anecdotal stories about him, but Goethe said, here, let me show you something. And he pulls out and he has original sheet music, the original piece of paper that Mozart wrote one of his pieces on. And he says, look at this. And it was like perfect, just like he transcribed it down. There's no corrections, it just rolls out. He says, now look at this. And he pulls out this sheet of music, and it's got coffee stains on it, and stuff scribbled out, and things written, corrections above. And he says, that's Beethoven. And so you can gain a really strong picture of the creative process and the difference between the two, the Promethean Beethoven, struggling, fighting with eternity, whereas like Mozart's like just, like an angel, I came down, he's like,
maybe some people are just that much.
He's transcribing the music of the spheres. And not that Beethoven isn't, but he has his own opinion about what he thinks it's supposed to take place.
Mozart's that guy that memorizes the Scantron right before the test. He comes right into the test and just starts A, B, 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 and you're like, that guy's not even reading. He's cheating.
Well, yeah, because like there's a story of Mozart, and he's with his father, and his father takes him to go hear this piece of music in the cathedral, and you're not supposed to like copy it down or anything. It's a very exclusive presentation. And Mozart goes home after hearing it one time and plays the whole thing.
Yeah.
So, what is that?
Yeah, no, he's the best. Not to end this abruptly, I lost track of time. I have another show in 2 minutes.
It's time.
No, I love that. Yeah, how do you make sense of that? You don't. He's just. But to me, that's all the more reason for reincarnation. I'm like, I want to be that good.
Yeah, well, like the Comedy Saint-Germain, writing a letter with two hands at the same time, and then you can put them over the other one, and they superimpose perfectly. Okay, not that I need to know how to do that. I could do that, but it'd be nice to have at least some kind of deeper insight.
Yeah, that's why they're the best. Let's wrap this up. For everybody listening, please go in the description. You can please go find the links to all of his books, his YouTube channel, all that. Your Twitter might be in there too.
It's my books are all on Amazon under my name, John Barnwell, JohnBarnwell, and just put in space and then books, and you'll get it, and you'll also get the books that I've edited for Dr. Douglas Gabriel, and all the work I did with him and Tyler Gabriel, Dr. Tyler Gabriel, his industrious wife. So there you have it. That's my world lately.
I appreciate it, dude. I'll send you this when it's up. It'll probably be up tomorrow, as always, man.
Okay, and I'll send you the technical information.
Yeah.
So you can put it beneath the video.
All right.
Okay, cool.
John, appreciate it, brother. Till next time.
Hey, have at it.
Thank you so much.